How's it going, guys? Thanks so much for clicking on this video. This is a CDL Talent Roundtable discussion where all of us as talent got together, put our heads together, and basically talked on each and every single CDL roster heading into MW2. We chat on what was their journey last season, what they've currently constructed, and the way that this roster could look or this team could look moving into the MW2 year. So major thank you to all the talent for joining in on this, for having these conversations, as well as to Bryce, who actually orchestrated all of this stuff to come together. Now the full-on VODs will have a full part 1 and a full part 2. Those links rather will be in the description of this video that you can feel free to check out to watch it more in long form. If you want to check out certain teams, certain snippets, I will have that here located on the channel. If you haven't seen your favorite teams upload yet, I promise it's coming. We talked about all 12 of them. So make sure to let us know, whether through different content pieces, if you want to tweet, comment, like, subscribe, any way that you guys can show us some support to let us know that you guys like content like this. We would love to hear it. We'd love to hear your guys' feedback, output on ways that we could even make it better. So without further ado, I'll leave you to it. Enjoy the video, and I'll see you back here on the channel really soon.
All right, let's move on. Florida Mutineers.
I think this is the worst team in the league.
Well, I don't think they were good last year, so let's go back and recap for those watching about going into this year. Florida Mutineers were a disappointing team for me last year. Like I don't know what was going on over there. It never felt like the team had the right combination of players. It never felt like they had enough to win. It just, every time I would see this team come up on the schedule, I'd be like, I don't even know if I want to watch that game. It just be it just felt like, oh yeah, they beat somebody, and then I just never felt like, oh, I'm now confident in the Mutineers.
Yeah. Well, they were kind of always not in too bad of a spot. Major 2, 4th, Major 3, 5th to 6th, Major 4, 5th to 6th. Like at actual LAN events, they weren't too bad. Outside of Major 1, obviously 9th to 12th. Not qualifying for champs is a bit of a sting, but when they actually were at the events for the majority of the time, they did okay. They did all right. They were never setting anything on fire, but they were just kind of, they'd beat somebody they shouldn't, they'd lose to somebody they shouldn't, and they'd come top 8. That was kind of.
When did they make their roster change? Like, when did Dave Patty hit the bench?
Before Major 4.
Yeah,
before Major 4. That's when they brought in 2 real and Major.
Yeah. Yep.
See, like, it made no sense. They dropped Vivid and Dave Patty, and they kept the same formula. Like, that was the thing for Florida. It's like last year, all year, we were telling this team, like, yo, we're playing Vanguard. You're going to need 2 good SMG players, not 3 AR players. And, like, that's why they struggled in the beginning, because you had multiple players running the same exact role. Vivid was the only guy getting put in an absolute blender. And, like, with Florida this year, I feel like they just got basically stuck with the scraps. Obviously, you're staying with the Major Maniac. He's a great leader for this team. S&D guru, like, the guy comes in, he makes plays. But when you talk about the rest of this roster, like Brock, he was a guy that was literally dominating with Major and Challengers. They won an event.
By the way,
then you got Havoc.
It's Brack, not Brock.
Yeah, Brack, same thing.
Fair enough.
and then their SMG players, who do they have? They have Havoc, and who's their other guy?
VIKUL.
And I think VIKUL is a solid player. I think VIKUL, in comparison to anybody in the pro league, I feel like VIKUL is most compared to Bance, in my opinion. Like a guy that's always going to think objective-minded off the rip, hit that early rotation, and that should be able to work out perfectly for him. But to try to work with a player like Colt Havoc in the structure is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Brack and Major Maniac, if either one of those guys get shut down, it's tough. Then it relies on this team to simply win search and destroys. That's probably what you think looking at this team. Is like they have to be good at S&D for them to compete with any of these other teams in Respawn. That's the thing that really scares me. When you're a team that's lastly formed, you have to come out here with strictly raw talent. Obviously, you got a lot of hungry challenger players that are trying to make a name for themselves, obviously being in their rookie year going into this year. But I feel like this team, unfortunately, didn't make the best moves. They didn't really have a lot of moves to make, but going up against some of these top teams in the game, they're really going to struggle if their S&D isn't on point, because I feel like their Respawn is going to be hit or miss.
I don't think last year Florida Mutineers was set up to win.
Absolutely not. I just told you, 3 ARs.
Set up to be very mid.
You are right, and I want to go over this again, because I feel like I touched on it last year a little bit, but I kind of hedged my bet to say, hey, it could be good. But in the background, I honestly thought that roster change was fucking awful. And I think a lot of people did as well. Everybody was like, what are you doing? Like, there's no way this works. Like, everybody's complained about your playstyle all year long. and then you change it, and it's not the players that I have issue with, it's the fact that like the team would still set up the same damn way, and I'm like, come on, man.
Except
like,
this time they had a pillow.
You wanted to see them like pillow.
They brought a pillow to the squad.
You wanted to see them like bet on one of the play styles. That was my biggest thing. Was that like,
they
okay,
did.
cool.
Their old one, it was terrible.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like they literally. So I feel like the biggest problem, obviously, right, was that they had 3 ARs. Also, one of the biggest problems that they had was that they had the fastest player in the league and the slowest player in the league playing at that same pace the entire time. And so it was like, if we're talking about pacing problems, I mean, just based off of stats alone, you can clearly indicate, oh yeah, that team is going to struggle when one player isn't moving and one player will not stop moving. And that is what I really wanted to see them focus on, was obviously aside of the ARs, because we all know that was a problem, was honestly just invest in one of these. Like, are we going to be a fast-paced team, or are we going to be more of a slow-paced team? And it felt like we really didn't get that. I know Two Real didn't really have the performance that we wanted him to see. I think we can all agree Major Maniac, not exactly the perfect addition to a team that already has similar role type players. I think I agree. I think that was the biggest problem. And I understand, I'm actually very interested to talk about the future of this team, but I totally understand the thought process for why a lot of people, I think based off of what we're talking about right now, are also concerned about the future roster construction of this team moving in MW2, because it feels like they did not make the same, or rather didn't make the right decisions last year. And, you know, watching players like Vivid, you know, see success away from the team. How often were we talking about Florida? See, they're regretting it. They're going to regret Dave Patty. He's actually playing well in challengers. It felt like everybody was waiting and wanted to almost laugh at the Florida Mutineers for making their mistakes. And I think we're kind of carrying on that same conversation now in preseason.
I think when you talk about Florida last year, just think about the maps that we had. We had Berlin, we had Gavutu, we had Tuscan, and we had Bokaj. In the beginning of the year, they like to play a lot of Bokaj and a lot of Tuscan, but unfortunately, they never could find a win. When they started to turn it around, which is around Major 2, is when they started playing a lot of Kavutu hardpoint and a lot of Berlin hardpoint, and they were dominating. Like, they were so good at that maps, and the reason why is, don't worry about it. We all know the answer. They had 3 ARs. They had 3 ARs, so they were playing to the best of their ability, which allows them to dominate those big maps. But now, when they play the SMG maps, that's when they really struggled. Even after the pickup of Two Real, the guy was like, what, a 0.6? Wasn't the best stats, but it's not him as a player. It's because of their system. Their system is like slow and steady wins the race. We're going to have these ARs. All right, we're good. We're going to be good with these ARs. Awakening, he's an SMG. He can do anything. That's the way that they were looking at last year. And that's why it eventually costed them basically the entire year. So now going into this year, at least in my opinion, it's the same thing. I don't know. I'll just have to wait and see. This team, like I said, I feel like they're going to be in the lower echelon of teams, bottom 4 guaranteed. They do anything better than that, I'll be surprised.
I think last year was kind of surprising in the fact that I don't know what it did to those player stocks. Like, I think Dav Paddy took a massive hit. I think Awakening kind of steadied it a bit, but like we were still expecting more because it's big weight. Skies, I think people are looking to see what he does on a different roster apart from that. Like, so much of last year with the Mutineers was, this just doesn't look right. Like, I don't think they're going to beat the best teams. I don't think they're going to... I wasn't even confident against the worst teams. Like I said, it was such a middle-of-the-pack team. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. But I never went into one of their games confident they were coming out with a W. Mm-hmm. Like, I never went, this team is great right now. They are going to smoke. The map pool didn't work out fantastic for them. And I feel like it was... I think that roster change cemented Florida Mutineers in my head for me of... this is not done right. Like the roster change, they had to change something, but just not correctly. I don't think it was what they wanted. Like, it just doesn't make a ton of sense. For me, anyway, let's talk about the future of this team then. Obviously, I think looking at it this year, it feels like a kind of a fresh start for them. It feels like a very different team to how they started off the last year. I'm kind of interested to see what VIKUL'S going to do, because I want to see if that team, that Toronto Ultra North America team that he came from, obviously they have players in the league this year. Mm-hmm. I want to see how he looks outside of that roster.
Yeah. I mean, they've taken the challengers risk. They have 2 players in there who are unproven. I mean, Brack has been around.
Brack has been,
he has definitely been around. But it's still the fact that he hasn't been around the past year or two.
Mm-hmm.
So they're taking that risk again to see if he can bring something to the table that we know he has in there. But yeah, there is risks being taken. I've got full faith in VIKUL. I think he's a very good player. At Bryce over Caldwell, we commented over him in the challenger side of things. Very, very good in terms of EU challengers as well. Back then, did very well in NA as well. So there's that the ability to adapt is there.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to be able to bring it to the league though? I think he will, but I just don't believe that this team's going to be in the mix. I think the roster is okay. It's all right. But I just think that, we've kind of touched on it a few times already. There is a lot of strong rosters here. There is a lot of rosters here who have deep talent pools, who can go on, and we know that they can pop off. We could be completely wrong. Look, we put these guys, typically the Florida team higher. Last year we put London last, and London came out the gates firing with Gizmo, who we expected to be all right. Same sort of breath in a certain way. Came out, was really good. Obviously, that was up and down. Besides the point, I think it's hard to judge this team completely now because we have two somewhat unknown entities in that squad. Yeah. But that being said, their ceiling, we don't know where it is. The two players that they already have, though, is that going to be the inspiration these other two players need to then crack on and come into a top 6 placement straight away? I don't believe so. I think they are on the lower end of things and are going to have to fight very, very hard to get themselves further up.
All right, Lando, give me a positive.
Yes,
positive about
say,
this team.
I'm I don't know about Chance, but I think I'm definitely probably I said definitely probably. I am definitely the most I don't know, high, I guess, on Florida to an extent. I'm not by any means being oh yeah, this team is going to contend. There is no, you guys are crazy. I'm not saying that. I do feel like this team, talking maybe specifically, limiting the parameters is just Major 1, actually could see a level of success because I do think this is a team that is full of grinders. I think this is a team that is going to learn the game early. How often do we talk about, teams don't scrim, search, destroy? That could really be lacking. I actually think this could be one of the better, if not one of the best S&D teams in the game. Not just because they have Major Maniac, but I feel like Havoc can make plays. I think he and VIKUL together also could be a great tandem. And Brack was one of the best S&D players in all of Challengers. And typically, I don't know, it feels like in terms of search, destroy, some statistics carry over into the CDL, some don't. I've also heard a lot of good things about Brack. And I feel like he's going to be really the biggest piece that we're looking out for. Not only is he not only is he going to be in AR, which is such a valuable role right now, and it feels like in more of a slaying position. So I think there's a lot of question marks about him. I would probably bet on a majority of them that I think he actually will be good. I don't know how great he will be. And then getting back to the VIKUL conversation, I had the chance to talk with him, and last year his schedule was mad. He was going to school, he was going to college while playing in Challengers. He was talking to me about his schedule. The guy would literally wake up at 6 a.m., do some work, do some homework. Then he goes to class, then he scrims, goes back to class, comes back, scrims, watches VOD, and then goes to sleep. He doesn't have to worry. He doesn't have those same parameters this season. He's a very bright kid, and so I feel like I feel like him and Havoc are going to have freedom. I feel like the comms could be open with this team as well. And I hate to bring this up as oh, well, they have the element of surprise, but I think there is a level of passion that this team is going to give out there. I think it was whenever all the teams were rumored, the Florida Mutineers had, I think, the lowest odds, super early, to win champs. And I think those guys are motivated by that. So again, do I think this team is championship caliber? No, but I do feel like early on in a title, they absolutely have the ability to surprise with the personnel that they have, with the players that I think will be a little better than others already expect they will be. And also because of, I think, just the teamwork that this roster could hold as well. They could be one of those tactical teams that we bring up and honestly are really big fans of as years progress.
Okay, all right. Chance, any counterpoint? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Chance.
I don't think anything counterpoint related, or I don't know if I have anything particularly novel to say about the team either. I kind of think they'll be bottom 3. I don't know if there's anything too crazy. I think the points about S&D are pretty on point.
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like the Major Maniac special in a sense of like, you know, and especially with Havoc on the roster as well, like their S&D is going to be strong. There's no questions about it. But Major Maniac to me is kind of like, I think accuracy would be a good comparison, like another main AR of like, he is there to set up his teammates. He is there to make very like strong, consistent plays, but especially in respawn, he's not going to be that guy. He's not going to be the guy that's popping off being the main slayer. And like, while he is setting his teammates up and giving them good direction, they have to go and perform. And so when I look at Seattle, like I trust Civ and Pred and Mac to perform for sure. Like I have learned that lesson through Vanguard. So there's faith there. And it's just like having an SD fantastic and respawn, little bit hit or miss. And then Brack and Vikul to me are just more of like unknown quantities. Certainly Brack and Vikul and Challengers popping off, but I don't think they've come in with sort of like the same bravado that someone like Scrappy is like had. And I think Lando's points about Vikul are great, right? If he's having to grind like that and now he's got the freedom, then maybe that can like be his moment to where he's already winning in Challengers, ascend to like a superstar kind of status. But like that is just so much pressure and such a high standard, I think, for this team that like the brand new guys to the CDL like just instantly have to be superstars just to compete and respawn, let alone have like that level of success. So I think bottom 3 with like super scary dark horse potential, but just because of the S&D.
I took two things away. One thing from Chance, one thing from Lando. Pressure. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of pressure on these guys. They're young. They're going to be able to come in and just simply try to make a name for themselves. But then the other thing I took from Lando was passion. When you look at this team on paper, it's basically a Challengers team. Like, if you looked at this team on paper, you couldn't tell me that these 4 players were on a CDL pro team.
They were all in Challengers last year at one point.
Exactly. You would think they were all at the very top or like one of the top teams in Challengers. So that might be scary for some of these other teams because the factor of being like the unexpected. Because everybody's not expecting Florida to be really good. But if they put in the work, like Lando said, VIKUL'S no longer has to focus on school. He can strictly just focus on gameplay now that he's gotten to where he wants to go. Brack has finally entered back into the CDL where he's wanted to be. Same thing with Major Maniac. Obviously, he fell off. He came back on Florida at the end of last year. And with Havoc, another guy that usually in the beginning of the year has to make his way onto a roster by making an impact in Challengers. I feel like this team are all going to be driven to try to be the best they can, like to try to make an opportunity. Because right now, just being on Florida, usually last year, it's like we always talked about it. This is basically the organization you go for your career to die. Like a bunch of players go here and they just came back and just like completely disappeared. But with this team, what they're going in with, which is a brand new 4-player set, young challenger team. I feel like this team with the unexpected factor, as long as they put their heads down, they should be able to at least get a top 8 placing because their S&D, like Lando and Chance said, should be on point. But with their drive and their passion just for the game to try to be one of the best teams in the game, should be able to potentially put them through some respawns as well.
The last thing I just want to put one last little nugget out there is that I do think we will get the best version of this Florida team. However good that is, I think will actually be the parameter for them. But I do think that this is a roster we're not going to have to worry about like, oh, well, you know, they're just not performing. It's like, no, we're going to see the best looking performance that this roster can provide us with. It's just a matter of how great that can be. And then to get to the challenger side as well, another funny stat when it comes to the Mutineers is that they actually hold between Brack and VIKUL, they actually have a member of every single Challengers LAN victory on their team. Like VIKUL or Brack was responsible for winning every single one of those. So if we are talking about Challengers taking the best from Challengers, which again, we know Scrappy's on Toronto, but other than that, it feels like they did get the best. So,
all right, okay. For a team that I don't know if we were going to have a lot to talk about, we certainly had a lot to say at the end about what we think of this team coming year.